I lost a window.
Hey, Dhaval.
Hey, Dean, how are
So
you?
good, thank you. I'm super cool today in my sunglasses, so be it.
Very nice.
Excuse me. Uh, tell folks a little bit about you, and then I want to drop you into the first hypothetical of our situation.
Sure. So, I've been doing marketing since as far as I can remember. I started out like how people have summer jobs at the Gap or at the movie theater
Hmm.
or any other place like that. My first summer job was in college as a 19-year-old. I worked for a software as a service company. They were making proprietary software. And they gave me a book. It's like, you got to call this book and get us a client. So that
Hmm.
was telemarketing. That
Right.
they had no scripts, nothing. This is around 2001 or the year 2000. I can't remember at this point. Um, so since then, my career has taken many changes. Uh, for a while, I decided I wanted to become a filmmaker. So I made a couple of short films. I worked on shows like The Sopranos, Mad Men as a production assistant. And then one day I almost got frostbite after like almost a 20-hour day. And I remember thinking, I was like, I really love desks. That's when I decided that production life wasn't for me, um, and kind of took on marketing. So I've been doing digital marketing, social media marketing since 2007. I had my own podcast in 2007 that's music based. And currently, I'm a fractional CMO. Uh, I also didn't realize I was a fractional CMO. I was doing this for 5 years, and then someone told me, "Double, you're a fractional CMO," based on what I was doing for companies, primarily B2B space. Um, that's
And
it.
now you're on this podcast.
Now I'm here. I've
All
made
right.
it.
Okay. So then let's talk about that then. So I imagine, like most fractional CMOs, most of your clients are at least partly virtual or all virtual. But in
All
our
virtual.
scenario here, they're
Mhm.
only 5 minutes from your home. So
Right.
you've signed them first day, new client, new project, new everything, right? New
Right.
engagement. So you're going to walk in there Monday at 9 o'clock. And when you walk in to that situation, what's the dream scenario that you're walking into, and what's the nightmare?
So the dream scenario is that the CEO is ready. He's probably got the key, you know, in every different, people have different titles in different companies, but primarily the head of operations, the head of, the CEO, and um, customer service are all in a room together, waiting to have like our, first call with discussion of what's going to happen next. What are the goals? We set goals, and then we set deadlines to those goals. And at the end of that, the work begins. So planning primarily is, the
Right.
ideal scenario where people are glued into what's happening, clued into what's happening. Sometimes the worst scenarios is when I come on board and people look at me in the office like, "Who are you? I wasn't told you're going to be here. What is it that you're going to do?" So when clients go right, it's more like when things go right with the clients, it's primarily because everyone's clued into what's happening. They're
Mhm.
rowing in the same direction, I like to say. They have specific goals that they want to achieve, and I kind of make it happen with them. And the scenarios where I have had some nightmare scenarios where the CEO leaves the room. The I'm sitting there with a graphic designer, and I'm told, let's make things happen. So that would be the nightmare scenario.
Yeah. All right. That's good. Okay. So this is episode 183. And Josh, this is your second time being here. So welcome back, sir.
Thank you so much.
Tell folks a little bit about you again. And then I want to walk you through the same nightmare dream scenario.
Absolutely. So I'm Josh Rockoff. I'm a wartime marketer and technologist in consumer packaged goods, consumer manufacturing, B2B SaaS, and retail. I've worked in growth, distressed, turnarounds, and special situations. Channels I leverage include wholesale, marketplaces, B2B, D2C, B2C, Amazon, Walmart, on a bunch of brands people have heard of.
Wow. Yeah.
These days, I get called in by investors, businesses, and families to speed up their sales growth cost effectively. especially when they plan to sell, usually sometime in the near future.
So what's your like dream scenario that you walk into on day one, and what's the worst case?
So the reality is, I've worked in situations that there is no dream scenario, and there isn't worst cases. I've actually had the opportunity to go into some of the most distressed situations where they have like 3 weeks to live, and so
Whoa.
it's a different mindset. I will admit, what I really request is to have a seat at the table and to control my destiny, right? Own a P&L, be able to fashion the business that needs to happen. So much of the scenarios that I've worked into are, hey, we need you to take this by the bull by the horns and get this project, moving. In some cases, I had 2 weeks to essentially rebuild an entire technology stack. Whereas in other cases, they basically told me, hey, look, we want you to build an entire marketing department in 4 months, talking to customers, talking to our wholesale channel and to our distributor channel. But after that, you're fired. And so I'm like, wow, that's a great pet dog. But the idea is basically, for me, certainly the dream scenario is where you can actually carve out enough of a place or enough of a seat for yourself to be able to enact change and enact it quickly. The counter to that, the worst case scenario, is where you have meddling, right? And it's not unusual for boards to want to place
Right.
get their input in. There's other situations where the CEO and the C-suite are resistant to what you're trying to do. That's not unusual for me. In fact, that's actually commonplace. So I'm a little different than a normal interim fractional role where you're going in and trying to just step into a situation and not ruffle any feathers. The reality for much of what I do, you're bringing me in because that has occurred already. And now you want me to ensure that everyone is, calm, engaged, as well as, moving forward rapidly.
Okay, so Josh, that was day one. Let's jump as far into the future as we ever look on this podcast, which
Sure.
is 90 days.
Yeah.
Not long-term thinkers here.
Yeah, of course.
It's day 90. You can imagine a scenario where at day 90, someone you're probably the first ever, or when a company hires a fractional CMO, it's probably their first ever fractional CMO. At day 90, they have a chat with you and they say, like, you know what, like, we brought you in and I understood sort of the general value prop for what you were going to help us with, but the real aha moment for me of you being here was what?
People not only are respecting you, but you are considered part of the team. Like, people
Yeah.
don't necessarily view you as an interim or fractional. You've also not only completed the assignments that were assigned, you've now built out, you've expanded your role. So the last company I worked on was a company called Camco Manufacturing. The CEO essentially told me up front before I even started that I was going to be there for 4 months and then out. What reality was the CMO was like, you're an essential part of the team that I'm just keep on expanding your scope. And he extended me for 9 months, which was originally supposed to be 3 to 4. And even after he hired my replacement, the permanent replacement, he still wanted me to work on other aspects of the business.
Right.
That to me is success, right? It's not
Yeah.
just you have a strong deliverable. It's you're part of the team. We want you here. We want you to be part of the table of the executive team. We want you to be presenting to the board, because that is a sign of success. As much of that is, you also are able to mentor the teams. There are so many different teams and so many different business, parts of the business. If you're actually very much valued by all of them from the top to the bottom, that's a successful point too, because now you've assimilated with them. You've obviously had to do your job, but you have really engaged with the teams that are already there and comforted them, supported them. So that way there's not the churn that naturally occurs when you bring in somebody new and people just leave or they view it as a threat. In fact, if you're not only have a seat at the table, but you're also being part of all those discussions and all the office politics and all of the the mentoring that goes on with it, you're now an essential part of the team. And that makes you quite not only successful, it also makes you quite valuable.
Dhaval, how about you? What's sort of the I get it now. I now I understand what I didn't see before, or I didn't know it until I saw you do it. What's the aha moment for clients typically around like the 3 month mark when they've had some experience working with you? Oh, wait, sorry.
Yeah. No, so first of all, Josh, that was excellent. I couldn't agree more with him, because for me, to give a different side of it, achieving
Right.
KPIs, as simple as that.
Right.
People assume that sometimes they assume that the strategy alone will not make a big difference, but when they see the tiny changes that you've made in their value prop, utilizing different types of content strategy or whatever tools that you're using, but just that strategic mindset. And once they follow the path that you've set and they see it working, they see that uh, people in house also buy into the company a little bit more. They kind of see their value increase themselves, as well as the KPIs start getting met in the sense that we start connecting with the audience in a more meaningful way. They see, something as simple as conversions happening by changing a bit of the copy, changing, a bit of the graphics or whatever it is. Those are the superficial changes that at first they seem very uh, unimportant or tiny, but then when they actually start working, it's happened to me multiple times where they'll see the differences. And we also, right, as fractional CMOs, when we're working with a team and creating a landing page, we do multiple tests, 3 4 tests a week, to see what's working, what's not, and then we change it so rapidly. They see the efficiency of your strategy working, and that's what really uh, you know uh, helps them see your value, because you're actually meeting their goals, their business goals.
All right. So then, excellent answer. So, Devil, let's change into sort of scenario number two. Okay. You're on stage, you're the keynote speaker. There's
Mhm.
250 people in the audience. Every one of them
Mhm.
came out of corporate and became a fractional CMO yesterday. They're brand new, fresh out of the oven. These suckers. Okay. So, we're going to, for both of you, we'll walk through the speech that you're given, and like we'll touch on three things, and all you have to do is finish. You don't limit yourself to one word, but just finish this thought for me. So you're opening up, you're talking to them, and the first thing you say is, um, as a new fractional CMO, something you're going to be shocked by is
um I don't know. Something you're gonna be shocked by is, if you're not a planner, you're gonna have to really, you're gonna get a kick in the ass. I don't know what to say. Uh, if you've not planned, like, you got to be a planner. As a fractional CMO, you need to plan, execute, and super analytical.
right. Okay, and then how about this one? Many clients, many of your clients will just not understand what.
Um, that there's no magic wand. Uh, it takes time for a strategy to kind of evolve and grow. And testing is marketing. We're not. There's no magic wand. We have to test especially when you're in a new industry, because a lot of the times as a fractional CMO, you'll work with companies that you'd never thought of before. I had no idea what uh, a plastic surgeon does on a day to day, but I was selling medical supplies
Right.
out of nowhere, out of never having been into plastic surgeons clinic or knowing what they do. So it takes time to learn. And sometimes the clients will assume that since you're a marketer, you know the tools, you know how to, work Facebook, you know how to work Google Ads, then that you can do anything. But there is no magic wand, and each industry is different. And many times you'll need to coach your client on that reality.
Some percentage of viewers just turned off because they really, really want a magic wand. Like they really, really, really want one. All right, and then the third of three, they're sort of like ushering you off the stage, right? And some intern is saying, "Okay, we're done." And but by God, you're going to make sure that this audience knows one last thing, right? And you're saying, "Look, if I have one lesson for you about getting clients, it is
Do good work for your existing clients.
radical idea. Keep going.
And network. Those are the only two things. I mean, really, I think any marketer will tell you, and maybe Josh will also agree, but it's more like I get referred. Clients that I had 10 years ago will call me today if they need something. I've had CEOs just, hey, Dhaval, do you mind looking at this? Do you mind telling me what I'm doing wrong here?
Right.
Even long after the relationship is over, because they've, that trust has been built. So doing great work is actually the only thing. And then networking comes as a way, because naturally they're going to recommend you to anyone else who needs the marketing services.
All right. And then Josh, what do you think? Let's start over with the first one. So you're talking to these audience of brand new fractional CMOs, and they all just came out of corporate. They've probably never been on their own before, and so like, finish this thought for me. As fractional CMOs, the thing that you're going to be most shocked by is
the first thing that you're going to be shocked by right off the bat is the time. Right? Most people walk into a situation, they're like, "Oh, I have months, I have years, I can establish it," and then you get like 2 weeks, and it is a master class of how to do things and how to think quickly.
all right. Then let's go to the next one then. So you're talking to the audience and you're telling them, like, look, straight up, because you came out of corporate, a lot of stuff, you were like part of a system. What a lot of your clients don't understand is,
So I've never hit long-term goals ever. People are like, "Wait a minute, how do you not deliver long-term goals?"
right,
I'm like, because there's so much opportunity for fruit on the ground and short-term goals. And that's where I focus. In fact, in most of the businesses, even the ones I was there for like 7 years, we never actually hit a long-term goal. In one business I worked on for 7 years, we went from 8.5 million to 1.79 billion in revenue, right? Which
right,
seems like that's a long-term play. And the reality was we didn't have a long-term goal. We had a fruit on the ground goal, we had a short-term goal, and we had a midterm goal. That was it. You don't have to have a strategy that's like, "Oh, here's our 5-year plan." Great, do it in 5 years. But right now, here's the opportunities in front of you. Focus
yeah,
on those, get those executed, and worry about the 5-year plan later.
yeah. When I was in sales as opposed to like sales and marketing, I was in sales as an account exec. Uh, one manager had a really great concept for that. He said, look, if you ever find yourself, you've got an hour in your day, you don't know what you should be doing, just focus on the closest dollar. Just whatever you think you can close earliest, that's your priority. Don't worry about the long-term stuff. Go to the closest dollar, and then the closest dollar, and then the closest dollar. He says, like, it'll serve you well in the long run. And he's not wrong, because in
Yeah.
sales, it's very like, short-term kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then, okay, so then as you're sort of coming off the stage, but you want to make sure these folks have at least a fighting chance of putting food on the table. And so you're saying, look, my tip for you, if you're going to be to find and secure clients, is this.
So we're all marketers, right? Why
Mm-hmm.
aren't we doing marketing for ourselves? Talk about your achievements and spread it as wide and long as possible. I talk about the impossible, right? I actually say, here's what people would be consider impossible. Taking a technology migration, a MarTech migration in 2 weeks is considered impossible.
Yeah.
And I did it, right? And then I talk about it with a lot of people. And people are like, "Wow, that's impossible." And I'm like, no, I know, I did it anyway, right? Like, the reality is, if you do something amazing, talk about it. Be a marketer for yourself. Don't just be a marketer for the business you work on. Market yourself. That's the key thing. Now, let's be fair. Not everyone has the same marketing approach that I do versus Dhaval does versus others. That's okay. Position yourself as you would if you were working inside of a company. And that's the best way of basically, or hopefully, getting people to buy into what you do.
All right. All right. So, Devil, I want to switch this out. So you're done with your speech. This was a big convention kind of thing. So now you're out on the floor with the booth stuff. People are milling
Mhm.
around. You're talking to new prospects, like new potential clients. And as you're talking to new potential clients, what do they talk about with you that, marketing related, that you think is overrated? And what do they underrate that you think they would be better off spending more attention on?
Um, I think overrated would be something like vanity metrics, something like people focusing on the frequency. And I've changed my view on the frequency thing as well, because I also used to be in the boat of we have to post frequently, you have to post frequently.
Yeah.
But the more I'm growing, I guess, as a marketer and seeing the results, honestly, is that you don't have to focus on frequency, but more the value. I think a lot of times what's underrated is taking time to flesh out stories. Like, even if you spend time, let's say for example, a LinkedIn post. It's easy to churn out LinkedIn posts now, especially with AI and prompts um, on a daily basis. But what I've seen is when we go little bit deeper, just a little bit deeper um, on any post. It doesn't have to necessarily be statistics, or it doesn't have to be something specific. It'd be as simple as your philosophy of how you do customer service, or your
Mhm.
philosophy of how you deliver your goods in a different way, logistically, whatever it is. So I think the frequency of posts, the thought leadership kind of mentality where you have to do frequent posts is really overrated. um, and the work that you can do, like you can spend a good week just fleshing out and rehashing, like not hashing, editing a post that could be bring you your next, you know viral post organically.
All right. Is there anything you think is underrated?
Underrated, I think a lot of times people don't work enough on their landing pages. To be honest, they think once they've gotten a tagline, or let's say like a landing page proposition with a
Hmm.
couple of um, good bullets there, they think they're good to go. But they don't spend the time on editing that. They don't spend time on analyzing it, seeing where if a couple of words here and there can make a difference. So I think primarily, I guess that would be A/B testing, landing page testing is really underrated by
Hmm.
clients. I know
Right.
as marketers, we don't underrate it at all. We, I
Yeah.
mean, I live by that. And I think a lot of my success with clients has been due to those um, landing page A/B testing. And frequently, we were changing landing pages sometimes and these are products that move fast. This is not like
Yeah.
like a Rolex or something. These are
Commercial
products.
insurance or something. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So
And
just
then
optimize
as you're
landing.
talking to prospective clients, then, right?
Yeah.
What's typically like a red flag when you're talking to a prospective client, and what's a green flag?
Um, red flags are just I think I'm repeating myself, but it's like when they expect you to turn something around in a really fast manner. I know Josh has been saying like the quick, you can do things quickly, but what I've found sometimes is the expectations is that you're getting, let's say, 5 conversions a month, and now you want 50 per week. So that reality has to be there somewhere, right? Like, yes, you can increase the frequency of your sales, but it
Right.
won't be that fast, and you're gonna have to work to get it. So, and also, it's just like in a relationship, and this is nothing to do with marketing, but when you're speaking with someone and you're disagreeing with them in your mind, but agreeing with them just to kind of save face when you're speaking with them, that's a good sign that you're not going to be compatible in working together, if that makes sense.
Mhm. What's a green flag?
A green flag is when they ask questions about areas of improvement, they're actively seeking to grow, if they're responsive to new ideas, they seem responsive to your strategy, if
Right.
they're open to kind of take some time to kind of flesh out your plan.
All right. No, good answer. All right. And then Josh, how about you? When you're talking to prospective clients, what do they tend to overrate and what do they tend to underrate for effectiveness?
The number one thing that really comes up with overrated is essentially spending money, right? Like the reality is so many people really focus on new customer acquisition. Like, oh, we got to focus on new customer acquisition. We've got to spend money on the paid activities. We got to be all places. We got to be doing paid social. We got to do paid search.
Right.
Um, we have to do all of that too, because the only way to grow is to get new customers in the door and not to maintain our existing customers. So I actually found an interesting statistic, and I've been doing a anecdotal research for, I would say, roughly about 20, 25 years. If you're spending more than 46.8% of your marketing budget on paid acquisition activities, you're in trouble. Like, there's no guarantee you're going to go under, but
Right.
the opportunity for it is exceptionally high, which basically means you're buying your customer. All right. And so the big part of that is you're spending money on paid activities. You have maybe huge product catalogs if you're a product seller. And the reality is that doesn't necessarily need to happen. So I point to Karmaloop. This was a business in the streetwear urban apparel space.
Mm-hmm.
It went from 155 million to 3 million in bankruptcy in 2 years. And the reality was they had 9 million different products in their catalog. They were spending enormous amounts of money on paid activities. And what we did was we did a quick study, and 1.42% of their customer base drove 42% of their revenue.
Wow.
Right? 9,000 products. That was it. Right? So my sense is, and I think most people would be like, okay, just focus on the 1.42%. And the answer is that's what we did, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to take a company that was bankrupt, that had no money, drove it up to 54 million in top line, and sold it in 10 months. And that's how you have to think about things. And that goes to the underrated piece. You have to know your customer, right?
Yeah.
You have to know your customer. It's really that simple. In businesses that I've worked on, customer experience is our early warning system, right? It's hey, here's what's going on. Here are the products or the services that people are complaining about. Here's the functionality that people are really struggling with. It's your indicator of here's where you should be spending your time or where you shouldn't. And that is helpful for most businesses. I don't care if you're a service business, like you're selling HVAC systems, or you're selling a product, or you're selling both. The reality is by knowing what your customer wants and doesn't, where they're struggling and where they're finding success, it'll make it much more cost efficient for you to plan, set up your planning, set up your projections, your forecasts. But as important to all of that, it also helps you mitigate down the line of overreaching. And what happens most with overreaching, you start spending money on it. And then it's like a hamster wheel. The more you spend, the less the return. And so having that careful balance of here's where we're going to spend some money, but here's what we're going to do from an organic standpoint, from a free standpoint. And then, from a brand standpoint, understanding how the brand should be positioned, where the brand should be positioned, who we should be targeting, or what businesses we should be targeting. Those all help you really define your goals. And then ultimately, right, back to the comment that I made before, fruit on the ground, short-term goals. Focus on those. Yes, long-term goals are important and they're good for board decks. But at the end of the day, you can be an incredibly successful business by not having long-term goals.
And we're getting down to the end of our time. What's a red flag and what's one green flag as you're talking to a prospect that
Mhm.
sets them apart as maybe this is a good client for me, maybe it's not.
I work in a lot of stressful situations, but your role here is to help mitigate that. I've gotten where I was called in on a conversation before I even got the role, before I even knew what the role was, and I was getting screamed at. Like, this guy's terrible. I'm going to hire your replacement. And the person was like, wait a minute, I am the replacement, right? If you're already,
Right.
unhinged, right, working on this thing, yeah, it's probably a pretty big red flag. So one of two things I usually do, I either triple or quadruple my hourly rate, my day rate, to accommodate for that, because I know I'm going to have heartburn before I start the role, or you simply walk away. Right, that's number one. The green flag is really ownership of a P&L, right? It seems simplistic, but the reality is that means that they have full faith and confidence you're going to be able to do what you think you can do, right? If they are putting a lot of restrictions on you, it doesn't mean that you have to, be a spendthrift. The idea is, they give you a budget and they say, here's your budget. And if you don't know the budget, you build a budget. Right? Here's what I have. Here's what I can do. Here's what the cost of services are. Here's what it is. It doesn't mean you just start spending money either. This is where, like, knowing your customer and having a good understanding of who you're targeting and what you're targeting and with what tools you're targeting with. But at the end of the day, having that sense of ownership does go a long way, because they're not going to put the amount of faith in being an interim or fractional if they don't have that level of confidence. And that, to me, is a really big green flag.
Okay, so let's imagine, you guys know, you're in this is like a big conference, big hotel. You guys end up in an elevator together. You don't know anything about each other than that you're both fractional CMOs, because everyone here is fractional CMO. And so we'll start with Dhaval. And so Dhaval, you're looking at this stranger, Josh. Finish this sentence for me. Hey, so, we haven't met, but while I've got you here, let me ask you something about being a fractional CMO. Hold on, sorry, Dhaval. Had a technical issue there. So what do you ask someone? You're only going to have like a few seconds in the elevator, but this is a chance to get a different perspective.
Yeah, and I have had I love Josh's answers, and I loved everything that you're saying. It's really spot on. So I wanted to know, like, how did you overcome when you first started out as a fractional? How did you overcome that fear of, what if I don't get any clients? So how will I, like what's your sales process? I ask this actually to every fractional CMO I know. Like, what is your sales process?
I don't have one, to be perfectly honest, right? I will say I let the opportunities come to me and always have a backup plan, right? So I was teaching, I was an adjunct professor, and I was teaching classes at NYU and Fashion Institute of Technology. I started a company, right? I actually built a couple of companies. I'm a 4-time entrepreneur. So the reality is, have backup options.
Josh, what's your question for this stranger who you don't know anything about other than he's another fractional CMO?
What makes you excited to get out of bed in the morning and go do this?
I love the ability. I love the ability to kind of see growth, like finding a mistake, knowing that I can do it, like I can change it for the better, and the reaction I know I'm going to get from the client when they see that, oh, look, this worked, and the self-satisfaction also, that just like knowing, sometimes you'll wake up and you're like, oh yeah, I can change this and this, and it'll turn this around for them. And I know it's going to work. And I don't know it's going to work, but I test it and it works. And that's the moment we're like, oh, wow, my hypothesis was correct. And then seeing the client's reaction at the end of that too.
I chuckle because I used to, the questions change every 25 episodes. So, and I used to have a similar question, but I was a little more blunt about it. Josh, yours is way more polite. I would just say, like, there are easier ways to make a living. Why do this? All right. So let's, guys, this has been great. I got to wind up. Josh, who should contact you these days, and what's the best way to get to you?
So I put my calendar link.
Uh-huh.
Most people, you'll exchange 15 emails going back and forth, and some of it winds up in junk, and other places book a meeting, right? Really simple. Here's my calendar link. There's a 20-minute and 30-minute slots. Book a meeting. Let's get on a phone call and try to flesh it out. Some of the things that business may want me for may not just be the good fit. And in other cases, people may be like, hey, you know what? This is not the right fit. And it actually is perfect, right? So the way I look at it is book a meeting, right? Save yourself the emails back and forth. And it's simple because you don't have to write an email, right? You have to write basically, why are we talking? And you can give me a one line, need help, right? That's sufficient enough. And it also allows me to prepare in advance.
Sure.
The people who should contact me are people who are either looking to accelerate their growth and do so in a shortened time frame. Much of what I do is essentially extreme growth. Right now, when you're a $1 billion company, people are looking at it like, oh, well, can you go to 2 billion with the same tactics that you did from 10 million to 100 million? And the answer is surprisingly yes. Right. Much of the answers I've shared today are about how to accelerate growth and do so in a condensed time frame. Now, the reality is from 1 billion to 2 billion, that's like an inflection point. And knowing the tactics at 1 to 2 billion is really different. They have a lot of similarities, but they're different in the sense of, the timeline to execute. But the reality is, if you're looking for extreme growth, you're looking for somebody who could step in, and be able to start accomplishing things within a week versus 3 months, 6 months, a year. Those are the types of situations that I excel at.
Dhaval, how about you? Who should contact you these days, and what's the best way to get to you?
So I have my email here, begin at DPM. So that's the best way to get to me right now. Drop a line, and we can set up a meeting. Any company, any B2B distributor, manufacturer, supplier can contact me. Those have been my, I guess, sweet spot. Those are the companies that have seen the most
Right.
growth when they hired me. Sometimes quickly, sometimes over the course of 6 months to a year. And anyone actually who also wants to build their in-house marketing team. So a couple of the scenarios that I've really done in the past few years have been where I assembled an entire rockstar team, and it's been some of the best people I've worked with in my life, to be honest. Create a rockstar team that becomes like a machine. So even after I'm out, it sustains, the growth sustains throughout the life cycle of the company. So anyone who wants to build their in-house team but aren't sure who they need can also do that. And of course, I'd be willing to kind of offer my own fractional CMO services completely outsourced as well. So,
All right, guys, this has been fantastic. One of the longer episodes we've ever recorded, actually. So
well,
you guys are both very chatty. You've had
Thanks so
a
much.
perfect amount of coffee. And Josh, thanks for coming back. I just did a quick check, and it was almost exactly 1 year since we recorded the other episode you were on.
It was so much fun, and really do appreciate the opportunity.
yeah,
So great
this
to talk
is
to you guys. All right, so thanks guys for being here. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll catch you in the next episode. You're probably watching this in a clip, and see you next time. Bye.